Okay, in this video we're going to talk about the clone stamp tool. And this is one of my favorite tools because it's just so darn easy to use and it just has such significant results. And in this example we're just going to clean up some of the blemishes on this subject's face. But first we're going to go get our tool. And if you go over to the left here in the toolbar, it's this little one that looks like a stamp. You just left click on it and that selects it. It gives you some additional tools up here so you can make adjustments to it. And sometimes you can go ahead and do these adjustments right onto your background layer, but I don't prefer to do that, so we're just going to create a new layer by clicking right here. Now we have a new layer and we'll do all of our adjustments on the layer here, and that way if for some reason we decide we don't like what we've done, we can just toggle this off and be back to our original. Okay, do some good non-destructive editing. Okay, so we're selected on our new layer. We have our clone stamp tool selected. And finally what we'll do is double check where it says sample, we want it to say all layers. If it just says current layer, we're on a blank layer, so it's not going to recognize any of these pixels. So we need to say all layers so it can see down to the background layer. And then we take our tool over to our image, and I'm going to blow this up a little bit. So I'll press the Alt key and scroll forward. Oh, but first I have to make sure this is not selected. So click somewhere else to deselect. Press Alt and scroll forward to zoom in. And remember, you can also use the zoom tool and just click to zoom, or press Alt and click to zoom out. Or you can double click the hand tool to make it full screen, which is probably the easiest. Or I shouldn't say full screen, but full window. And then we'll go back to our clone stamp tool. And by the way, the shortcut for this is S. So if I'm over here, I can just hit S. Now I'm onto the clone stamp tool. And then we can use the left and right square brackets, which are right next to the P on your keyboard, to change the size of the tool. So we'll make the tool just the size of these blemishes. And then here's how the tool works. If you watch what happens when I hit the Alt key, it's going to create this little target. And that is saying that wherever I have this target, it's going to sample those pixels and it's going to clone them and stamp them where I go. So you always want to find an area of skin that is similar in hue and darkness to the area that you're working on. So I wouldn't want to come down here and get some of this shadows area and then try and fill it in, because it just wouldn't look good. So I'm going to sample right here, and so I'm holding the Alt key down. That's what gives me that little target or bullseye. And then I just click the button and you don't see anything happen, but it sampled a bit of the image right here. Now I'm going to release the Alt key and I'm going to move over this blemish, and you notice how it's carrying that. It's cloned those pixels and it's bringing them over that part of the image. So it gives me a little preview, and then I just click and then I can move my cursor away and you can see that it just cloned that right over. And actually you can see right here, if we go over here, you can see what it's cloning. It's a better way to visualize it. Another thing you may have noticed is when I clicked, and I'll do it again, and watch closely, just to the right of this circle you'll see a little plus sign. See that plus sign? That's showing me that that is where it's sampling or cloning pixels from. So to better represent this for you, if I hold it over here, you'll see that it's sampling from right here. If I go up by her lip, it's still going to sample a spot relatively close to the right. If I go hover near her fingernail, you can see it's sampling that same spot, like a half a centimeter to the right. Okay. Same if I hover near her earring. You can see, and I'll even click so you can see the plus sign again. And if I move, you can see the plus sign is moving. That's where it's sampling from, okay? Obviously I'm going to undo that, so I'm going to say Control Z. And then we'll continue on to other blemishes. So I have another blemish here, and I think I'm going to sample it from a little higher on her jaw. I don't want to get this darker stuff down here, so I'm going to go here and click Alt and click to sample, and then move into the image and click. That's actually a little bit too bright, so maybe we'll Control Z and we'll try it lower. We'll do Alt and click to sample a little lower, a little darker pixels. Try that. And you can also kind of hold the button down and then move over the area. Actually, no, that's sampling right on top of where I want to be, so that's not good. So let's do Alt again, sample that, and then we'll move in, click, and click. That's a little better, still a little off in color, so we could maybe try from over here. Go Alt, sample some of this, and then bring that in. There, that's much better, much more uniform. Then we can go down here, same thing, click Alt, sample something right next to it, and bring it across. Looks good. Do a little sampling from right here. And you'll notice there's this little crease in her skin right here. If I was going to clone from up here and clone it down over that, I will obscure that crease. So we wouldn't want to do that. I'm going to Control Alt Z twice to get rid of that. But if I'm going to cover up a blemish here and it's right on the crease, then what I can do is I can clone a bit of the crease right here, and I can bring that crease, and you can kind of keep that line consistent. And if you can look closely, if I pull down, I'm pulling the crease down below. I'm basically breaking the line. See it move? It's kind of hard to see probably. But if I hold the clone stamp right in the right spot, then I can clone it, and it will usually keep that crease pretty consistent. That doesn't look super great, so we'll just Control Z to undo that. But we took care of our blemishes there. Now, one thing to keep in mind is it's one thing to do blemishes because those are temporary and people don't usually want those showing up. But maybe like this mole here, you wouldn't want to touch up because that's part of her body and she probably identifies with that in some way. It's going to be different with every subject. Some people want that all taken care of, or if it's for a high fashion or something, then maybe. But in general, you want to kind of leave people with, say, freckles or whatever, okay? Now this looks like maybe some blemishes here, so we could still go up into here and do the same thing. Press Alt and click, sample that area right there, clone it, and just move over and click. And then another one right here. That's a little bit lighter than I would like, so maybe I'll try one from up here. There we go, that's better, keeping it consistent. And that looks pretty good for this subject. And then one other thing is, for instance, if you, now these are smile lines, and they again are kind of part of her face, they're part of her character. But if somebody was really interested in removing their age lines, and that was what they wanted, then you could, of course, come in and sample from here. And I don't even need to re-sample if I'm doing a long section. I can just kind of continue moving down. And we could maybe do a little bit more because it left a little bit of a line there. There we go. So you've kind of sampled some areas out and pulled that out of there. And just erase that line. And Control Z wants to get rid of a little thing that I did there. And maybe I would do one more little thing to change this highlight here. I'm going to click in the darker area and just bring this out a little bit more to make it look more consistent. That didn't really work. Let's go Control Alt Z twice. And we will go sample from up here. You kind of have to play with it just to get the sample area kind of just how you want it. So you can kind of smooth things. There we go, that's a little better. So we left one kind of smile line, but you can see how we can remove an age line if we wanted. Okay, and then I'm just going to scroll out a tiny bit here. And I'll go ahead and click this layer off. Remember, we did all those edits on a second layer, so we didn't ruin our original image. So if I go ahead and hit the eyeball and toggle this off, you can see now quite a difference in this image. Just really cleans it up and kind of brings back the subject's confidence. Okay, so just a quick recap on what we just did. We clicked on the clone stamp tool. Well, actually first we created a new layer by clicking on new layer, made sure we were selected on that layer. So we're doing non-destructive editing, not editing our background. Then we went to our clone stamp tool, or we pressed the S key to select our clone stamp. We made sure that we're sampling all layers. And to show you why it's important to be on all layers, if we were on current layer, remember the current layer is essentially blank. Well, it has a little bit of stuff on it. See if I close the background, basically has the things that we cloned and stamped in here. But you see how it's blank over here in the lower left. If I go and I do some clone stamping over here, say I'm trying to get rid of this wrinkle here, and I hit Alt and I'm sampling and I'm trying to fill in, you see nothing's happening. It's because I'm sampling from a blank layer. I'm sampling nothing right here. So it has to be toggled on and it has to say all layers so that it's going down and sampling pixels from this background image, which is these skin tones. Okay, so we've got that selected on all layers, and then again we go find a blemish, and this isn't really a blemish, but we hover next to it, find a similarly colored textured area of pixels, and we push the Alt key, and then we left click to select that, to sample or clone those, and then we move over what we want to cover up, and we can see that that's doing a good job, and we click. And there you go. Okay, so that's how you use the clone tool. There are a lot of other uses too, like for instance we could even go in and remove this earring if we wanted to. It's really that powerful. Or we could give her another earring up further up in her ear. It takes a little bit more finesse to do those kinds of cloning, but it really is a powerful tool that's just really, once you get the hang of it, really easy to use, and you could use a brush for a half an hour to get those few blemishes that we just got rid of in like a couple of minutes with a clone tool.